I usually don't get in the middle of Twitter flame wars or dive into some of the infighting that goes on between people who I think are all doing something essentially good, and that is pushing back against the very bad ideas and even worse pedagogy and classroom practices that are showing up in our schools. But I feel like I have no choice but to dive in today. What am I talking about? Well, over the last 24 hours or so, there's been a battle between people, and I'm not going to bring names into it. This isn't about personalities. This is about ideas. People who say critical race theory is anti-white. It's explicitly anti-white. It is an anti-white movement, and people need to understand that they're trying to hurt white people, and that, we need as white people to stand together and push back and so forth. And people were saying, not so fast. Critical race theory is not specifically anti-white. It is actually anti-everybody who disagrees with it. And its long game is a lot bigger than just hurting specifically white people. And in fact, it is not a game to specifically hurt white people. And the battle rages, and people are fighting, and back and forth, people are name calling, and people are saying you're crazy, and you're a lunatic, and you're playing word games, and so on and so forth. And I want to speak out on this and say where I stand and explain why. And I'm going to get to this article on the screen because it's going to help me. But first, let me explain my position so you know where I'm coming from. You can decide to watch the rest of this video or not. If you don't want to, you know what to do. If you do and you want to understand why I feel the way I do and how some people who agree with my position frame it and explain it and what you can take away from it to be effective in this fight for better ideas, for good ideas, stick around because I think I'm going to provide that. So first, my view on this. Having read through more than I ever wanted to read about critical race theory, whiteness studies, white fragility, anti-racism, intersectionality, comprehensive sex education, social emotional learning, culturally responsive education, and so on and so on and so on. One thing stands out to me. The people pushing all of these ideas, the people who have attached themselves to these and they're promoting them as being anti-racist, that these are the things that are going to fight bad things, fight things like racism, fight things like intolerance, fight things like hate. Things I think most rational people would agree are bad. Most Americans would agree are bad. The country was literally founded on the principle that these things are bad. Even if we didn't always live up to those ideas, we pretty much agreed as a majority, these are bad ideas that don't lead anywhere good. They purport to do that, but the one thing that they all believe is that the world is a system of power struggles. It's just all about power struggles that are zero-sum in nature. Power can never be shared between individuals, never mind groups, and there's always going to be a top dog, and the top dog is going to manifest in a group, that the people who identify with the group that happens to hold the most power are going to individually hold the most power, always and forever. And there's nothing anyone in a quote out group can do to break into that. And if they do break into that, it's interest convergence. It's only because the people in power have something to gain from it, but it's not real. So the world is binary. The irony is the people who insist that, sex, gender, it's not binary, see the entire world as literally binary. The powerful, the powerless. Do you need it specifically to be anti-white? Well, I submit to you that the only reason you might say things about white people or whiteness or attach it to something like race is immutable, the visible, the phenotypic kind. It's immutable. Can't change what I look like. Okay. But at the same time, it represents the current majority population. If you're trying to demoralize a country, you got to go after the majority of the people, and you have to do it in such a way that they don't realize it's happening, frog in the pot, because so they don't fight back. They don't pull their kids from the schools. They don't fight you in any meaningful way. They don't pull you out of office if you're a politician or if you're a public servant. You have to do it in such a way that they do it to themselves. Well, what do we know about the United States? The United States is actually not a racist country. It's not. Now, we're already gaslighters, and we already say things are true, they're not true, and the things are true or not true. So what do? We tell a majority population that is already self-conscious about a stain on its past, racism. We tell them that they're terribly racist. And we appeal to the emotions that we have told them are the most important things in the world when they were little kids. From the time they were little kids all the way to now, we've told them that how they feel and how other people feel is the most important thing ever. It's reality. Reality isn't really reality. It's what you feel. It's what other people feel. That's what matters. Impact matters more than intent. We've been doing that for decades. That's not new. Just happens to be a tenet of CRT, a tenet of whiteness studies, a tenet of anti-racism, a tenet of all of these. Impact over intention. So we do that. We tap into the emotion. This is what narcissists do too, by the way, narcissistic abusers. We tap into the empathy in the person or the majority population, and we turn them on themselves. Does it make us actually anti-white? No, we're just using the term because it's the majority population. And because we know if we also attach qualities, good qualities, the qualities that would enable the people to fight back to the white population, to the whiteness, to this thing that has a specter of past racism to it, then we're going to more easily turn people against the very things they need to fight it, whether it's cognitive behavioral therapy and psychology, whether it's accurate mathematics and numeracy to understand the little number games and the things they're doing with our money, whether it's, critical thinking through reading literature and history and so forth. We're going to say that's all about whiteness and all the things we don't want people to use. We're going to attach to the thing that we already know they have an emotional negative response to. And the people have but everyone has an emotionally negative response to the idea of white supremacy. Everyone in America does. They're using our anti-racism against us to call us racist. Now, is that any different from being anti-white? Yes, it is. Anti-white, if you're going to compare it to, like, for example, Hitler's being anti-Jew. And by the way, Hitler did a little bit of this too, because he lumped in capitalism and he lumped in all kinds of good things into being Jewish. So people would more readily reject capitalism and reject book learning and reject all kinds of things by, I don't want to act Jewish. That's too Jewish. So in that respect, it is very similar. It is very similar. But is it literally anti-white? Like, for example, is there a group of people sitting somewhere who would like to and would ever have the power to round up all the white people, put them in cattle cars, take us off to, just because of that one fact, just for being white? I would say no. Are people using whiteness because of representing the majority population as a word game, both to have people turn on themselves and form in-groups and out-groups within themselves, like this group, like the people who are saying it's anti-white and like people saying, no, it isn't. Now we're creating our own in and out group within it. We're fighting amongst ourselves so they can go on their merry way, doing what they're doing. That's where they're doing it. But they are not literally sitting there going, we hate white people. Now, why is it so easy to believe that they are? Because there are individuals who do that. Absolutely. And they should be called out. There are people like Mark Lamont Hill, who absolutely is an anti-white racist. Clearly. There are people like that psychiatrist who went to Yale, who is clearly an anti-white racist, a psychopath who would love nothing more than to kill white people purely for the sin of being white. We've seen all over the internet videos of people saying white people are bad. There's Robin DiAngelo who says it, although I believe she's a white supremacist. I think she announces that everywhere she goes. But there are individuals who say things that are explicitly anti-white, and we should treat them accordingly. We should never back down, and we should never, pretend they're anything other than they are as individuals. They definitely are racist. They are as anti-white as any KKK member is anti-black. They are. But that's very different. And they do feel emboldened and empowered to do what they're doing with impunity because the technique, the mind game, the word game that the people inside the institutions are using is facilitating that. But that's just an outcropping. It will be exactly the same if you become one of them and say critical race theory and all these other teachings and all this stuff is anti-white. You will become one of them on the other side. You will become part of the us-them binary that the people in power want to happen. They so badly want that because there's two ways that the majority population, who happens to be white, or at least happens to be white and or agrees with the values and beliefs and tenets and things that are opposed to this binary way of non-Western Enlightenment thinking. Okay, this anti-individual, anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-freedom, anti-everything good idea that they're pushing with critical race theory. So anybody in that group, if you start breaking off into factions where it makes it solely about the race, you're doing the work for them. They're like, this is awesome. They're fragmenting before our very eyes. They're not hanging together. They're not demonstrating how wrong we are. They're literally demonstrating that we're right, even though we're not trying to say this stuff. We're just using the specter of white supremacy to get them all on edge and get them defensive and get them to self-censor and get them to, like hide and cower and do our bidding so that they'll keep their jobs. But the other way we can get them is if they self-segregate and they make little affinity groups and divide away from people who are not white because they're so paranoid about it's anti-white. And now we can legitimately point at them and say, look, it's a white group. They're white supremacists. And if you are also Republican or conservative or Christian or libertarian or anything like that, they're like, see, we told you that all of these ideas are just about hate. They're just about white supremacy. See, there's a little white group that says it's anti-white. You're doing the work for them. That's what they want. They want you to see it as identarian. They want you to take the same binary approach to life that they've done. That's what they want you to do. You have to resist it. You have to realize that they're playing games with you. They're liars. Most of them are white. Most of them are white. That's how the analogy to the Hitler and the Jews falls apart, because nobody in his upper echelon was actually Jewish. But most of these people actually are white, okay? The grifters alike, grifters and politicians alike, they're mostly white. So they're not anti-white. They'd be anti themselves. No, they're anti whatever they have to be anti anybody who disagrees with them, to get the majority of people either self-censoring or segregating in such a way that they can go round them up. They're the white people we want to round up. They're the bad ones. There you go. And they definitely don't want you being an ally, a real ally, with anybody who's not white. Because those people are minorities, legit minorities. And if the strong people come together with minorities who don't buy into this crap, then the minorities have power, right? By strong, I mean majority. So if the majority population joins with the minority population who thinks this is garbage, then the majority population is actually protected. If the majority population starts fragmenting and breaking off into little white defense affinity groups, which of course they are salivating, they are just hoping that happens so badly, the minorities are unprotected and those groups become minorities. Those little affinity groups become minorities. They're no longer part of a white majority. They become a minority group, easily rounded up, easily identified, easily infiltrated, and easily imprisoned. Okay? And whoever's left will no longer really be a big enough majority to fight back. They just have to succumb. They'll probably be made up of a lot of the self-censoring people who bought into this garbage, and the job will be complete, and the powerful will have a one-party nation that is ruled either by a single totalitarian leader, a committee, or a series of committees, or some giant business oligarchy, whatever it's going to be. But it certainly won't be a pluralistic republic anymore. I think the problem with explicitly focusing on it's anti-white is, like I just said, you're going to encourage people to, I would understand why, to feel so completely alienated from anyone who isn't white that they don't interact, form affinity groups of their own for defense or whatever. And then you have some really bad actors getting involved in that. And that's just not going to be good. I mean, like I said, they're going to have all kinds of justification to go round people up on even the mere suspicion of being involved in that. And then you'll see whiteness as a reason to do that. Then it really will start to become about, oh, that's one strike against you is you already have white skin. Now you have to prove you're not a member of these groups. But that's all more likely to happen if you focus on that. What do these people fear? They fear unity. They fear it like the plague. They don't want us to connect. They don't want us to say, this isn't about being anti-white. We know it's a cis. This is about being anti-American. first and foremost. This is about being anti-liberty. This is about being anti-individual. This is about being anti-universal values that hold us all together. This is not, you want me to believe that you're just against white people. No, you're just using that. You're using that. It's a word game, and I don't want to play. You're full of garbage. You just don't want me to have anything in common or feel aligned with anybody who doesn't look like me out of fear. You want me to be as scared as you, but I'm not. I'm not, and I'm not going to be just because you are. See, that's what they want. When people are terrified, and narcissists are terrified, psychopaths are terrified because somewhere in the back of their damaged brain, they know there's something not right. They have to keep it all going. They have to keep it all going no matter how much it blows up in their face, no matter how much physical danger they are in or their children are in. This is why you'll see people and you wonder, like, but that woman is white and her children are white. Why is she hanging a sign around the kids saying, I'm a racist or I'm a this? Because she's terrified, you guys. There's a gaping hole inside her where her soul should be, where her self-esteem should be. All of these years of so-called self-esteem movement also were designed to do the exact opposite. Everything that has built us up to today was pitched as the exact opposite of what it actually is. The self-esteem movement was meant to tear down your self-esteem by removing all opportunities for real achievement. The social emotional learning piece is meant to separate you from your parents and fixate you on your emotions and in your emotional world where reason has no place. Reason has no place. Now, we all have emotions and we all consider emotions and they are valid and they're important and so forth, but it is really a bad idea to make your decisions on that basis and to evaluate the world solely through an emotional lens. But that's what they want little kids to at least misinterpret that they're supposed to do. Because when you get a kid young, that's what they tend to do. They're already emotional creatures. Just get them to stay there. Don't let them learn how to reason. And that's how you end up with college students rampaging all over Portland, tearing it down, burning it down, and somehow thinking that civilization is going to still be held up by someone. Someone somewhere in their magical thinking world is going to keep the lights on. Or maybe they just don't care. Maybe their psychopathy is that far gone that they don't even care if they die. So that's kind of the argument as I see it and why I'm against it. But I did want to look at this article, The Right and Wrong Way to Address Concerns About Critical Race Theory. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what he does, this is Frederick Hess, what he does is he differentiates between the bills that are out there right now that just kind of flip it around. They sort of take the bad idea, flip it around and say, you're not allowed to teach these ideas. Okay. It's like teach these other ideas or just don't teach these bad ideas as if you can ban ideas. And I've tried to say on this channel before, like the ideas live in the teachers' heads. You can't ban them as a practical matter. You just can't. Their whole worldview is shaped by this. So, he differentiates between the bans that are sort of explained that way as far as what the teachers aren't allowed to do and the ones that are done correctly that you really can't dispute. So let's go over the difference. All right. So first of all, he talks about the Oklahoma bill. Okay. He says, first, the wrong way. Many legislators have adopted a reflexive, reckless approach, introducing or passing bills which seek to ban topics or ideas they find problematic. For example, the Oklahoma CRT ban signed into law last month states that no teacher, administrator, or other employee of a school district, charter school, or virtual charter school shall require or make part of a course the following concepts. Now think about it, you're trying to ban a concept. Even though I find the list of topics pretty anodyne, I tend to agree that public schools shouldn't be teaching students that one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. The business of defining, implementing, and policing a list of prohibited ideas gets troubling real fast. How are you going to decide that someone said one race or sex is better than another? Now you're really getting into the weeds of word games. I just think that's going to be difficult to do in practice. All of these are going to be difficult to enforce. There's no enforcement arm. There's no real explicit punishment, and there are teachers' unions to protect them. So I don't know how you're going to do that anyway, but he's right. Moreover, some of the topics that Oklahoma banned strike me as extraordinarily vague. It's not clear, for instance, just what is meant by the provision that no individual shall feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race or sex. This is literally the same wording that the people pushing microaggressions use to say that people have a right to safetyism. I mean, they don't. This is safetyism. We're trying to fight against that. It is that impulse to, my feelings are reality and I shouldn't feel this way and you shouldn't make me feel this way, that is the problem. You don't then go and codify that and say no individual should feel discomfort. Why don't you just give them carte blanche to say, I feel discomfort because they said racist things, or giving permission to teach microaggressions. This reflects a gross misunderstanding even of what's being taught. While I wholly agree that elementary school students shouldn't be sent home in tears by educators more focused on ideological crusades than student well-being, it's inevitable that middle and high schoolers may experience race or sex-related distress while talking about Jim Crow, the Holocaust, Korematsu, or Roe. Expecting teachers not to consciously inflict emotional pain is one thing. Suggesting that they steer around all such topics is quite another. They can't. As a practical matter, they can't. They can't know who's going to react to something. And if you make that their job, you're making it impossible for them to teach anything. They're just going to second guess themselves right out of teaching every single book there is. And they're already doing that. Critical race theory already does that. That bill is almost a permission slip for teaching critical race theory, which is more evidence, in my view, that it's not explicitly anti-white. It is safetyist. It's anti-individual. It's about anti-critical thinking. It's, all the subjectivism garbage. It's collectivism. It just uses white as a kind of a code language for all the things it really wants to get rid of, because it knows, the people who push it know, if they told you we're anti-American, we're anti-individual, we're anti-liberty, we're anti-family, we're anti-feminist, we're anti, all the things that we think are good and attached to progress and well-being, you wouldn't have any of it. But they know we're self-conscious about our racist past. They know we're good people. We are by and large good people, and some of the most self-conscious and most eager to please and most eager to demonstrate that they're not racist are white people. Does that make it anti-white people? No, it makes it anti-empathetic people. So then he goes on to talk about the right way. Okay? And this I have said before, there are some bills that do it very, very well. Legislators do well when they consciously echo the provisions of the Civil Rights Act that have been brushed aside in the excess of anti-racist education. After all, public educators compelling students to participate in a race-based affinity group and label themselves on the basis of their race or ethnicity is not a problem because students are talking about challenging ideas. It's a problem because Title VI of the Civil Rights Act protects students against discriminatory treatment or racially motivated harassment. So we're not saying don't form these groups because we don't want you talking about ideas. We're saying don't do it because it's friggin' illegal. It's illegal and it's too easy to be manipulated and abused and have actual racism be put into practice. Discrimination is illegal in America, in the public square. These are government spaces. It is illegal. It's tax dollars. It's illegal. This is why it's problematic. It's irrefutable. The problem with teaching students that objectivity or being polite are part of white supremacy culture is not that it's wrong for students to examine epistemological questions or societal norms, but that it's wrong to insist that certain universal civilizational traits are the property of one racial or ethnic group. And now I want to stop for a moment and explore the often ignored fact that CRT is white supremacist. Even though, yes, it was thought up by Black people, by Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw, people like that, okay, they were Black, even though it is white supremacist. It is white supremacist. It says explicitly that Black people cannot succeed without white people doing something. White people stepping aside. White people are just default in power. And even though it started in the United States, there's no differentiation between here and any other country. It's just anywhere. Anywhere white people are, Black people can't succeed. Well, that's demonstrably false. And it presupposes that white people are inherently superior in some kind of way. And even these things about, what they're calling white supremacy culture that are really just universal civilizational traits that have been adopted the world over by people who are most certainly not phenotypically white, even that is attributing to white people traits that are demonstrably superior in terms of running a civilization, having it function. But they are not the property of white people. They weren't even exclusively invented by white people. So it is white supremacist to say that they are. It's demonstrably white supremacist. And I think that's important. And I want to speak directly to the people who say it's anti-white. And I'm like, actually, it's not. It's really not. It's pretty damn flattering if you were a racist to be told that all the things that make society function are whiteness. It's like, I don't want to own that. I mean, that's if I cop to that and said, yeah, damn straight, that would make me a white supremacist. That's gross. So, figure out what you mean by anti. Like I said, there are individuals out there who certainly are absolutely racist. They're as racist against white people as a KKK member would be against black people. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an ideology that seeks to get the majority population to submit so it can flip-flop power from people who see reality to people who don't, to people who are absolutely terrified. And they can't figure out a way to live in the world with people who are psychologically healthy, so they have to conquer them. What comes next, they haven't thought that far. Do you really think the serial killer thinks about what's going to happen next after I kill these people? No, they just have to kill the people because that's how they self-actualize. I have to do that. That's what they're doing. If you can just wrap your mind around the mental illness behind this, it will be a lot easier. If you're a person out there who's ever dealt with a narcissistic abuser and stop and think about it, do you think they came after you because you were what you looked like or some other immutable trait? Or do you think they came after you because of your empathy, because you're a person who gives benefit of the doubt, because you're a person who's self-reflective and intelligent and thoughtful and wants to live a good life and live in this world in reality, good, bad, or indifferent? And they can't, and they don't want to. And the only way they can feel powerful is to take somebody like you and turn you inside out and drain you of everything that makes you good. If you've ever been in that kind of a relationship, as I have, you will understand viscerally what I'm talking about, and you'll realize it's not specifically against one group. As long as members of that group are loyal to them, they don't give a damn what they look like. They couldn't care less. Focusing on the matter as reinforcing the Civil Rights Act means it shouldn't be a problem for conservatives or anyone else for schools to tackle the kinds of issues associated with CRT, so long as educators do so in ways that are educationally responsible and respect their students' legal rights. That's a principled place to stand and one that offers constructive common ground for people of good faith. Idaho's legislation offers a fruitful model for tackling legitimate concerns without getting into the business of banning ideas or suggesting some topics should be off limits. It declares that no educational institution shall direct or otherwise compel students to personally affirm that any sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior, and or that individuals should be adversely treated on the basis of their sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin. Such language doesn't seek to prohibit or restrict ideas or what gets taught. It restricts specific actions, and these actions are meaningfully defined in a manner that provides some clarity to schools and the judiciary. So basically, the point there is, and I know some of you already are like getting ready to write me a comment. You're getting ready. Oh, she's so wrong. She's so wrong. Oh my God. They are going to go in there. There's no good way to teach CRT. I agree if that's what they were specifically doing. They're teaching some of the tenets of CRT. They're putting it into learning materials. But imagine this lesson. Just imagine for the sake of discussion. That, especially given that everything that's been out there is still out there. We're not gonna put the horse back in the barn. We can't get the idea that America's systemically racist out of the public discourse, even amongst our kids. It's been out there for too long. So now imagine a teacher goes into the classroom with the new rules and says, all right, class, why do you think it is that in America, so many years after the Civil Rights Act, and I do wish they would start there, that there are still big discrepancies in how people do in life that seem to fall along racial lines? Where you have things, and you can even show them statistics, teach them a little math while you're doing it. See the statistics? Like, there's a way to interpret this that makes it look like white people succeed and black people don't. That's like one interpretation. Do you agree with that interpretation? If not, why not? If so, why? And what other things could be causing it? What else could be painting this picture? Are there any other factors that could come into play? Now, you will get arguments, and you will get people in the class, because again, this has been out there. There are kids who have been absolutely diehard believers. It's just because of race. Absolutely. My parents taught me, my grandparents taught me, everybody taught me this. My teacher taught me for the last 5 years. That's what it is. But a good teacher could say, all right, I understand that that's what you've been taught. But have you ever been shown this? Did anyone ever talk about that? Did anyone ever mention this? Let's read some Thomas Sowell. Let's look at the concept of systemic racism. Let's get a definition on the board. What is it? I bet you get 10 different definitions. If you guys can't define it, how are you going to identify it? All right, so let's get a clear definition that most of us can, reasonably agree on. It's at least been fair in addressing all the different factors that could come into play. Let's even get a definition of systemic while we're at it. And so on. Now you have a lesson, and this is a high school lesson, by the way. I don't think this really would be good for below 9th grade. My personal opinion, maybe smart middle schoolers, maybe. Below that, I think you just teach the history. Teach it honestly. And if a kid goes, why is America so racist? Like, well, why do you say that? And then point out the progress that we've made. But do you understand how banning the idea is also telling the students what they can't talk about? Student voices an opinion or an idea from everything they've heard for the last however many years or at home. And the teacher has to be like, we can't talk about that. We're not allowed to, nope, we're not talking about it. Nope, we don't discuss that because that might inconvenience or make uncomfortable little Timmy over there. We can't do that. Just like you wouldn't want them to say, that have the conservative kid who says, yeah, but what if it's because they don't have dads in the home? You can say, we can't talk about that. Nope, shut up. Can't talk about it. It's going to upset that guy on the other side of the room. No. You have to be receptive. That's what learning is. You just say, okay, well, let's talk about that. And some kids in the class will boo and hiss and say, hey, hang on. You are not permitted in my class to gang up on someone because they have they've asked a question, they have voiced an opinion, and he's being curious. We encourage curiosity in this class. Let's talk about it. See, good teachers are not afraid of these questions. They're not afraid of curiosity. They're not afraid of an opinion, even if it makes them wince a little bit. That one doesn't, by the way. I would welcome that. But if it makes them wince, like the kid who says, but America's so racist, my gut would be like, oh, I'm in pain hearing that because I don't agree. But now I have to be an adult. I have to be objective and say, I'm not going to help this child learn for himself what reality is or isn't if I just shut him down. And so you have to hear that and you have to say, all right, why do you think it is? And then go ahead and solicit from the rest of the class, encouraging them to be kind. What do you think? What do you think? And again, go back to defining terms. Well, let's talk about what is systemic, what is racist. How do we know? What if we're wrong? What would the consequences of being wrong be? Talk about consequences. So there are things we could do. But if we start right now and we get attached to this notion that it's just anti-whiteness, it's anti-white, it's anti-white people, they just want to round up all the white people and put us in prison camps. No, they sure don't. First of all, that's a practical impossibility. They want people, plural, of all races to self-censor, break apart, form affinity groups, disassociate, be afraid of each other, isolate, just like the narcissistic abuser wants you to cut off your friends, cut off your relatives, be leery of other people because they might talk you out of the relationship with the narcissist. That's what they want. They don't care if you hate them. They don't care if you're afraid of them. They don't care. It's like whatever your emotional reaction is, as long as we don't unite. As long as it's not good for us as a country. As long as it literally attacks the very things we're trying to preserve. As long as we're running around in secret, passing messages back and forth because we don't want anyone to find out that we're talking. As long as whatever. As long as we lose sight of what we're trying to protect and they're trying to destroy. We're trying to protect the republic, not a democracy. We're trying to protect the republic, a pluralistic society in which people of every race, creed, sexual orientation, gender identification, etc., can live free and in peace without fear that they're going to be harassed, harmed, robbed, killed, etc., period. Never mind on the basis of some immutable characteristic. And the people pushing this garbage can't take power that way. They can't take power away from those people. They can't take power away from people who link arms and say, we don't agree on everything and we look very different and we live different lives, but we're agreed on one thing. Freedom of speech, yeah, that's sacrosanct. We're not censoring ourselves. And as far as what color you are, I don't give a rat's patoot what color you are, what color your skin is. And you can do anything you want. And I'm going to hold you to that. I'm not going to make excuses for you, whether it's in school or in the workplace. I'm going to demand that you do what you need to do hold this job, keep this job, get this job, etc. I am not going to demean you by expecting less from you because you have a certain color. I'm not going to say that you're obliged to somebody or not obliged to somebody based on your color. These people, yes, they're racist, but they're collectivist first. Racism is just a tool that they use. And the fact that it has emboldened some actual racists is just the cherry on top. It's just the cherry on top. It's part of why they chose it. They chose it because we're not a racist country. Just like people who are victims of narcissistic abuse were chosen not because they're weak. That doesn't give anybody any power. You can already walk over the weak. The people who want to take power don't need to take it from people who don't have any, do they? They need to take it from people who have it. So how do you take it from people who have it? You make them give it away first. Here, I have no right to this. This is not really mine. It's yours. Or you take away what they have that gives them the power, which is unity. So that's what I had to say. Like I said, I don't usually jump in the middle of these things, and I'm sure to get lots of hate mail on this one. And I don't care because this channel promotes the truth and reality and reason. So thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful. And tonight, please join me for a live collaborative conversation with Stephen Kent and Christian Watson about how to actualize this sort of thing when fighting it in your school district. Thanks for watching. As always, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and join my locals community. That's the video.